Frankie Cartoscelli. Guys, I want to do this not too differently, but as we break down the 113-100 loss, Kings Lakers, I just want to get your thoughts. You guys were all scared yesterday. Allen, what's the show going to be? Allen, you're going to cook up these crazy trades. Hey, I just want to chat. I just want to talk. We're all good.
I'm scared coming into every one of these. Don't worry. It wasn't just yesterday.
It's all good. So I just want to get your thoughts. That's all.
Yeah, the only fear I get is when I see a game is going on, the middle of a game and the trade machine is open.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Granted, at a time like this, maybe you don't deserve as much flack as usual, but normally the things that you cook up are just abominations. So.
Can we all say that I was right, though?
About what part?
That this team needed a change.
I think we've been sitting here for months now.
No.
There needs
Brenden,
to be some changes.
No. Let's wait it out. Let's wait it. Maybe I'm lumping you guys together, but I've been on this. And look, the DeMar DeRozan thing, I'm guilty. I thought I saw 50 wins. I was wearing the purple lenses, and that's probably not going to be the case. Okay, but as you look at this team right now, is there any hope to turn it around? Because I saw a team yesterday, guys, among the statistical issues, I saw a team that looked deflated. I saw a team that looked a bit defeated. And when you let a team get 14 offensive rebounds, to me, that's hard. And if you're going to let somebody snatch your chain at home, we were sitting next to each other. Let's go Lakers. It was disgusting. Disgusting. That's what worries me, that this is now beyond roster construction. Am I wrong?
I think that we've seen them bounce back already throughout the course of this season. I think we've also seen them go on winning streaks and then them inevitably end with some sort of gross loss. Like, I think these last two qualified, Denver and LA, obviously. But look at like that San Antonio game, the San Antonio-Portland 2 games in a row. Those were horrible losses. And then they came out and beat Houston, and including that game, won 4 of their next 5. And then we're right back to these 2 most recent games. So, when it comes to point differential, this team is 6th in the Western Conference. They're 3-9 in games decided by 5 points. They need to be better there, and I think that they will be. I do think some of that is there were some shots that haven't been going down, but they need to be better defensively. Like, reality is they're 1 winning streak away from being fine in the Western Conference, but they're also, it feels like 1 losing streak away from potentially this all spiraling.
But this is the losing streak.
We could be in the middle of it, but they could turn this around.
Now, hold on. I'm not going to sit here and say, things could be worse. But a losing streak, we've seen losing streaks. We saw multiple, I think, 9-game losing streaks in a single season 2-3 years ago.
No, that's fine. I want to err on the side of the people that have been here longer than me, because I think that's the fair thing to do. But I'm not going to parade around the little winning streak they had against a bunch of G League teams, because they are not beating teams that actually have NBA players on them. They're not.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that there is very much reason for concern, like borderline panic at this point. And like we talked about the last time, I've been preaching patience for a while, and they have to do something right now. Like, we are very much at the point where you have to do something, and you really want to do it sooner rather than later. But obviously it takes 2 to tango. There's only so many sellers. And from a seller's standpoint, it's probably best to wait till the deadline, because that's just when conversations become more in your favor. So that puts Sacramento in a weird spot, but we're absolutely at the point where they need to do something. But I do also still have hope that this roster can put together a better run than what they have up to this point. And I think they're more talented than what their record shows up to now. So I think it's both.
Yes,
I guess is really what I'm saying.
They should be playing better.
Yes,
but for them to get where they want to go,
they need more.
They need more. I want to give a shout out to Brenden, by the way. I don't know if Starbucks accidentally gave you 2, but Brenden came in here with a coffee for me. So if I'm if I'm even more,
I don't drink coffee.
Juiced up. Are you a tea guy?
I don't know. I just drink water and other
soda.
Wow,
other stuff.
That's
another thing.
That's an American right there.
Yeah,
that's an American
diet soda.
Another brown beverage.
I don't even drink soda that much, really. But I'm not hurt by you're not bringing me a coffee. I do like hot chocolate though.
Okay.
Yeah,
Noted.
And then
He's-
you can grow up. And a Martinelli's apple cider.
There
too.
you go.
No, of course not. We do have some in the house though, because my wife,
Sure,
pregnant,
yes.
she has her Martinelli's.
Do you
There
think
you
he'll
go.
be a coffee guy after he becomes a dad?
I tech world, I only drank coffee when I had a bunch of meetings. Toddler Stiles came around. If I don't get this,
Yeah.
See, that's where the Coke Zeros are going to come in.
Okay.
Because I don't drink coffee. I don't really drink soda as much as I used to. When I was a kid in high school, I had a problem.
Just
I drank
wait.
a lot of soda.
Just wait.
So I'm gonna have to kind of tap back into that because I need caffeine.
Just wait.
Okay,
Well,
Franklin.
the Kings need something. I don't know if they're only drinking decaf or whatever it is. They need to drink a Monster before the games. Maybe they should do that. I don't know.
Well, look, and we talked about it on our podcast this week. I have no idea what metrics fall in line with this, but on Basketball Reference, the Kings, the expected win-loss record is 16-12. So that goes to show that the metrics show you that this team is better than their record indicates. But, from a pressure standpoint, and I saw last night, and we've seen some still shots. I think our friend Matt George made a GIF last night or a couple nights ago of Vivek Ranadive. Last night during the game, I almost took a picture. I forgot. All the people that kind of go to those courtside clubs, they're in there at halftime. There was one person sitting courtside last night when the third quarter opened up. One person, it was Vivek Ranadive. And it was kind of like an eerie, kind of telling just shot, which he's there probably every game, but more times than not, he doesn't look as concerned as he does now.
It's been like that for a couple games now. And you know what's funny is it's not like the team can't see, right? I mean, the team is right there. They can see him, but seeing them, brick shots.
That being said, and the pressure is there, it's growth on the side of Ranadive and ownership, because I think a couple of years ago, maybe there's a move that's already been made or there's something that's already happened. And honestly, a part of me just being around the team, whether it be growing up as a fan or kind of watching things unfold or covering it, in the media, part of me kind of was like, told Brenden, like, maybe we should be on alert tonight if something happens. And that shows growth from the organizational standpoint. And there's no pats on the back needed for that. Now the time is for action. And I think now we're looking at a situation where there are players available on the trade market, but that price is going to keep getting jacked up. If the Kings get desperate right now and they try to make a move and rip the Band-Aid off, which for all intents and purposes, they always are looking to make moves. I think the front office, even though they're not making the moves at the, the caliber or at the, in a timely manner as we all would like, they're looking.
They're linked to everybody all the time.
But a lot of teams are, because the market is pretty thin and pretty bare right now. But I think kind of just the general feel around the team and organization, there is a sense of I won't say panic, but I'll say that there's a sense of we got to get things done and get things going. But like Brenden said, this roster does have probably the most talent in 15, 20 years that this franchise has seen. And I don't know if it's a matter of finding the right formula of lineups, rotations. Mike Brown's getting a lot of flack right now, and I'm listening to some callers, listening to some things on the way in. What else do you want him to do? He started Malik Monk. He's moved around Kevin Huerter for the past couple of years.
And that's what I said. If we're sitting here arguing about Isaac Jones, no disrespect, don't we see a problem with that?
And like you said, great story. Isaac Jones, a two-way player, a guy who's undrafted, kind of like Keon Ellis, who we've seen Keon look great last night. He had some good moments. Obviously, he's on a full-scale NBA contract now. But you can't expect the Sacramento Kings in a year with the expectations that they have, with the signing they made with DeMar DeRozan, they kept Malik Monk in free agency. They signed Mike Brown to an extension to roll out a two-way player as their starting power forward. It just can't happen. There's no other teams that are supposed to be in the spot the Kings were wanting to be in. And I get it's a matter of, well, who else can do it? That's the question. Who else is capable of going in there and being a starting forward? They don't have one on the roster. They just don't. They're the only true forward that this team has on the roster right now that's healthy is Keegan Murray. DeMar DeRozan has been a player, which I wouldn't say he's a traditional small or power forward. He's played a lot of two, I think, at the beginning of his career in Toronto also.
Yeah.
But this team has a clear hole. When Trey Lyles comes back, which it sounds like he was gonna be on the verge of returning the other night, the calf kind of had a little bit of soreness. Maybe he'll be in play for tomorrow. We'll see at practice in a little bit. But, I get that the fact that people want to change things up, but some of these moves, like we're talking about just super drastic measures of putting some of these players in spots that I don't think they're really ready to be in.
Do you think that there is a world where, and it's tough because Mike Brown just got the extension. Does it feel like Mike Brown, I'm trying to be careful here, I always do, is kind of being left hanging out to dry with every day that a move isn't made, right? Because there's no explanation. If this team had Jordy, would they be? I mean, there may be some coaches out there where, yeah, they're a couple games better. And maybe that's a big difference to people, right? Maybe if they're above, maybe right now they're 13 and 15. If they were 15, if they were whatever, 500 or a game above 500, would they be looked at a lot differently? I don't know about a lot. I don't think it would be panic time, right? But I don't think people would be. I think we'd just be complaining about different stuff and why the team is only 500. So if you want to argue a couple games here, there's some decisions that Mike Brown or Jay Triano, whoever has made, I think that's fine. But in a way, it does kind of feel like it's a weird time for Mike Brown. If he was going to be a sacrificial lamb in a way, why extend him? And maybe there's some, it's all leading back to the fact that a move has to be made, because unless you're prepared to move off of Mike Brown before his contract even starts,
right,
you need to make a move, because right now he's getting all the flack because it's a bit of low-hanging fruit. And I do think there are situations where he could be better. But again, we're talking 2-3 games here. I don't think Eric Spoelstra would come in here and this team would be the second seed in the West. I don't think so. Are you saying?
Well, okay, so like there's a couple coaches.
Okay, well, let's not say Eric Spoelstra.
Right.
Let's say available coaches.
Right, exactly. Like there's nobody. And I've yet to hear anybody, I've asked the question a lot, name me an interim coach that has turned a season around. Joe Mazzulla does not count. That does not count.
Tyronn Lue and
Ty Lue
David
is the
Black.
one I hear.
But that's more of the
look
roster.
at what Ty Lue,
exactly.
what we've come to realize Ty Lue is.
And
tell me who on Sacramento's
also
staff.
Like prime LeBron James
Yes.
on a generational run through maybe the greatest finals comeback of all time.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not the answer. And Mike Brown is not perfect. Like starting Doug McDermott against the Nuggets, probably not the best idea. And he almost in my mind, admitted the mistake when he went to Jay Crowder.
But Dougie had
pretty
16.
Early. He was fine. But I think like the setting the tone early, he was part of the guys getting back cut. He's on Michael Porter Jr. having to go through screens. If you have Jay Crowder out there, can he be the one on Aaron Gordon instead of DeMar DeRozan? Which, by the way, we've had DeMar DeRozan guarding Aaron Gordon, and then he had, I think, just a very short stint on LeBron James last night because they were mainly
they tried.
They were mainly matching Keegan's minutes with him. But no, Mike Brown is not perfect, but I feel like he's doing all he can. And we knew going into the press conference yesterday, or at least I had the question of like, all right, what are we about to get right now? Because Mike's not happy. This is the same mistakes as the last game. And we got the I'm not mad, just disappointed dad vibes, really. And he even mentioned, one of the quotes is, I got to figure out how to get them to do it. Just executing, essentially. And later in the quote, he says, if need be, I've got to try and find somebody else that can do it.
Let's talk about what that's going to be on the other side. We're way over time here. Frankie's giving me the Dame Lillard. All right. We'll be right back. Frank Cartoscelli, Brenden Nunes, more Roundtable, Allen Stiles, Sactown Sports. Allen Stiles, Sactown Sports, taking up to 2 p.m. Brenden Nunes, Frankie Cartoscelli. Brenden, didn't want to cut you off. Hopefully you didn't lose your train of thought. We can continue on here as we talk about Mike Brown, because I'm ready to start Jordan McLaughlin. Okay. Jordan McLaughlin, Malik Monk. Sit all the starters. Sit them. And have another coach the game. Guys, I don't know how much I'm actually kidding here.
You should coach a game.
I don't know how much I think they need a full reset. I know I'm a little older than you guys, but the cartridge, you blow out the Sega Genesis cartridge, the N64 cartridge. You need a reset, guys.
I had a 64, just so you know.
There you go. Shout out. What was it?
Star Fox.
Star Fox was crazy.
I tried to push that nickname for De'Aaron for a while and never caught on.
That would have been a dope logo.
Thought it was a good one.
There you go. All right, continue, Brenden.
But yeah, I mean, one of Mike Brown's quotes yesterday was essentially saying that he's got to figure out how to get the guys to do the game plan, that they're not executing on the staples that they have coming into the game. And the most standout part, end of the quote, to me was, quote, if need be, I've got to try and find somebody else that can do it. And when it comes down to it, that's not even Mike Brown's job. He's talking about on the roster.
Right.
But to me, that almost feels like a, hey, help me out here.
Right.
He needs the front office to do something when it comes down to it. And again, Mike Brown has his flaws. I don't think that's the issue with the team. Now, there are, I think, valid questions about why are they not listening to his game plan. I don't think it's that they're not listening necessarily, I guess, but not executing it. And, then that did he lose the locker room conversation gets floated around. I don't think we're there, but he needs help. And I feel like he's practically asking for it. He praises, and he's done this since he got here, other teams' length, physicality, athleticism. The Kings don't have that. And I feel like he's practically asking for help.
You know what's weird? Oh, go ahead, Frank.
No, and I hate that we're at this point, and we have respect for those guys in the front office. We have had conversations with them, like been friendly with them. But at the same time, kind of like Dave kind of alluded to this morning, that got to call balls and strikes, and kind of looking through the track record here of the front office and Monty, the trades that have been made. I think we can all look at the Domantas Sabonis trade now, and that was almost 3 years ago now, which is crazy. We're coming up on the 3-year mark of that trade in February. But I think we can agree that the organization has taken a step forward since that. Can we? We can agree with that?
Yes.
Since then, though, what really have been the notable moves? I mean, I'm looking back here, and, he traded Davion and Sasha to Toronto. They got Jalen McDaniels. He was waived at the end of camp. They traded.
And that was can we say that? What was that?
It created space, I believe, to be able to sign. You cleared off Sasha's cap room. You cleared 2 roster spots. You're able to get DeMar. You had some flexibility to bring another player in.
Who was Jay Crowder?
Well,
I think it was re-signing Malik.
Yeah, it was,
if I'm remembering that correctly.
Malik was already re-signed, though.
Well, they usually like to operate.
Yes, DeMar. Then DeMar.
They typically like to operate with an open roster spot. And then I'm looking at, they traded Rashawn in the draft 2023 with Omax. That was a trade. They traded for Chris Duarte. There's just not many moves that jump off the page here. I mean, they traded Mo Harkless for Kevin Huerter, which is a trade that, I think a lot of us at the time, that was a good move. But now that move with the draft pick stipulations, it's kind of holding them back from making that swing for the fence type move. So we're really looking at the DeRozan trade was a big move, no doubt. But it's been almost 3 years since they've made like a move for a win now, like build around core type of player. And I think DeRozan was more of kind of a stopgap and a guy that we kind of talked about on this show about Keegan Murray. If he's going to grow in the player that we all believe he can, he's going to sign that new extension, maybe this summer or maybe a little after. He can fill that void, because I think there's a rule around how many max players you can have under contract. It's 3, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
So I look at the front office, and like to Brendan's point and everyone's point, I think out there is maybe it's not going to happen today, but I think we're at a point now where a significant move has to happen, or else there's going to be some jobs that are going to be lost. I think
I saw what Cam Johnson is doing, and he's balling out. And I wonder now, after a game like last night, are the Kings I thought they were a Cam Johnson away. Now I don't know if are they still a Cam Johnson away from turning this thing around? I don't know.
I think that they could be, because again, I think the talent's on the roster, and you look at like what Dallas did last year, right? And now they paid a lot to go get PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford, and I don't even think the Kings quite have all that available to them necessarily. Well, if you were to like unprotect 2029 first, for example, or something like that, that'd be similar in that aspect. But what if it's Cam Johnson and Devin Carter, for example? Does Devin Carter change anything? And that's putting a lot of pressure on a rookie that has missed the entirety of the season up to this point. But again, it has to be both. It has to be the guys on the current roster have to be better. But getting one more guy that you can rely on. They're playing 7 guys yesterday, 8 if you count Alex Len.
I was 7, I think, for the one Len stint. It was 7 guys.
Yeah, and maybe a few minutes of Isaac Jones max. And it's like getting one more guy, I think, should make everything easier for everybody else as well. So I think there is a trickle down effect, and I do think Cam Johnson is in that caliber of guy. But to me, it really has to be 2, and Devin Carter could be one of them. But I don't know how comfortable they might be relying on that.
Got to get to a break. We will get some of your calls on the other side, and we're going to discuss Monty McNair and De'Aaron Fox. Allen Stiles, Sactown Sports. Allen Stiles, Sactown Sports. We're about to talk about Monty McNair and De'Aaron Fox with Brenden Nunes and
no
Frankie
echo.
Cartoscelli. Fox.
That might be our job, actually.
Guys, am I tripping, or they weren't playing a lot of? Maybe the game just didn't call for it. Not a lot of sound effects after, maybe because they had, what they have? 11 threes. I didn't hear a lot of the sound effects.
It might be on the Lakers.
I saw Malik. I heard Malik for sure.
I mean, I don't know. It seemed like it was pretty normal to me. I mean,
okay.
I heard a pretty light Keegan Murray.
How sad, and I think I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, the one at the end.
That was the saddest Keegan
I love
Murray.
Moke, though. I love Moke. But even Moke, you could tell it was kind of just like, Keegan.
Do we have to?
Yeah. It was like that reaction from him. He's like, Keegan.
That was the saddest Keegan Murray I ever heard. And those dang Laker fans, if you got a Laker fan friend that's been going to the game, I mean, I'm sorry, because they're probably roasting you, and they have every right to after last night. It was embarrassing. 916-339-1140. Want to open up the phone lines even with the guys here so we can react to how you're feeling. Pam wants to be part of the conversation. What's up, Pam? What you got for us? Pam going once? Oh,
can you hear me now?
Yes, we got you now. We got you now.
Yeah, sorry. I have a question about Mike Brown. I hear everybody talking about, this and that, and is it his fault, and is it not his fault? I don't know who else you get other than Mike Brown. And the other thing is with acquiring other players, I heard you guys talking about it earlier. I mean, are there players out there that we can actually get to come here that will play? And how's that going to solve the overall lack of execution on the game plan?
Yeah, thanks for the call, Pam. That's a great point, because you can bring players in, but if the guys that you have still aren't listening to you, that's not going to solve. And that goes back to is Cam Johnson that glue, the flexi glue or whatever it's called? Is Cam Johnson going to be able to flex tape? Is Cam Johnson going to be the flex tape? Let's start with the Mike Brown thing, and I think we talked about this a little bit in the first segment. As far as Mike Brown is concerned, I don't think it's going to happen. Again, logistically speaking, they extended Mike Brown because they didn't want him to go into this lame duck season, which means he is still getting paid for his old contract right now. So and they just stopped paying multiple coaches at the same time, the Kings did. So they would be effectively firing Mike Brown before his new contract even kicked in. And I don't know if that's ever happened. I'm sure it has, but I just don't see that happening, guys.
I don't think it happens often, and it would be a very old school Kingsy or Kangsy thing to do. And personally, I don't see that as something that's going to happen. I think that in recent years, or maybe earlier in this ownership's tenure, a knee-jerk reaction that could have been the first pin to fall. But I think Mike Brown is, again, we've said it again and again, he's doing the best, I think, with what he has, and whether you think he's doing the best or not, that's your opinion. But the roster is what the roster is. He's playing the best 5-6 guys every night, and he's playing them more minutes than most teams in the NBA are playing their main guys. I mean, you can look at the minutes leaderboard for the NBA. They're playing their guys that are the most minutes by far. And last night, like we talked about, a very thin rotation. We'll see if getting Trey Lyles comes back and Kevin Huerter can continue to be good in the bench role. But I do think this is a matter of it's a front office. To me, again, we had the blame pie. I think I'm making my slice today more 50-60% to the front office and 20% to the coaches. And, maybe the players get a little bump too, though, because I think the players do need a little more buy-in. And maybe that's where having a little bit of roster turnover could help. Maybe you do retain those core in that first five, but having a stronger second unit and the question of, are there players out there? For sure there are players out there. Maybe it's not the Cam Johnson or Dorian Finney-Smiths, but, that's the front office. That's their job, to go out there and kind of scour the market, find the players that are available. And there's no doubt the Kings have the assets, and it's not many, but they have enough to get a deal done to find someone to supplant, to make a bench whole. Because right now the Kings are playing with really 1 to 2 bench players, and I guess 2 if you count Trey, who's not really healthy right now. So
it's just crazy.
Yeah, and it's been tough. And look, we know that Trey's trying to get healthy, man. It's just there's just been some bad luck. What Pam said leads us right into our Monty McNair conversation. But I did want to say this, Frank, because you make a good point. There are no perfect coaches out there. There are levels of coaches, but there are no perfect coaches out there. And I think one thing that's happening with Mike Brown is that his margin for error is so much smaller than certain other coaches. Joe Mazzulla, he doesn't coach perfectly every game, but because of that roster, he doesn't have to. He can, I should have played Derek White more there, or I should have got Peyton Pritchard in the game here, but they still win games because of who they have. Mike Brown has to pitch a shutout every single game, and every player has to play their best every single game, which is not sustainable. So I think our expectations for Mike Brown, he's not going to coach a perfect game every game. But if he doesn't, they lose. And even if he does, they could lose. That's a problem. That's a problem. But I want to keep moving to the Monty McNair.
Well, can I touch on that really quick?
Yeah, for sure.
I think that it's about the accountability of the guys. If somebody doesn't have it on a given night, to your point, they need everybody that they have right now to pretty much be at least at a B level, if not higher.
DeMar didn't have it last
standards.
night.
Right.
No, he did not.
And if you had another guy there on the bench that you're comfortable with, it's a lot easier to hold the guy in front of him accountable. Now, I still think we see Mike do that, and you're just going to lesser options. But if you have another guy there and somebody's not executing, it's like, all right, well, at least we have another option for somebody that we feel like could even possibly execute the game plan that we want here. And I think the whole, how's adding a new guy get us to, or get the team to respond better to the coach? Sometimes I think changing just the environment of the guys in the locker room and going and making a win now trade can, as cliche as it sounds, but just like change the vibe of the locker room and get a little bit more belief in the group. Because Domas will say, we all love each other. We all believe in the talent of this group.
Right.
But this can't feel good for them either. And at some point you start to be like, man, we really do this all the time, huh? So I think that a trade can change the energy of the team.
The Monty McNair piece that I wanted to touch on is when this started going south, I remember Dave saying that it would make the most sense to, if he were to guess, it would be moving off of Monty McNair instead of Mike Brown, simply because of what we just talked about. And you want to give Mike Brown a chance on his new contract to work with a better roster. But if you were to move off, I don't know that you can afford to move off of Monty McNair. You almost have to give him one last hoorah move, because if you move off of Monty McNair, are you cooking the season?
No.
You're not going to bring in somebody new and have that person say, all right, we're going to make this big move, right? So I don't.
Yeah, you got a month until the deadline.
Exactly.
Here you go.
Here you go. So I don't think they can.
And I agree. We talked about that last night. I don't think the Kings have ever made an in-season GM change. An in-season GM change, I think in the NBA are pretty rare. I know the NFL has done a couple things. Well, the Jets are the Jets, but the NBA has. It's not really the way that they kind of go by the book there. So the way I looked at it, and I say the next 20 plus games in the deadline are kind of going to be indicative of what the future could hold. If the Kings if the bottom continues to fall out and they don't make an upgrade, clear upgrades at the deadline, I mean, I think that bed's already made. So I'm looking at, and it's a little daunting when you think, look at the strength of schedule for the NBA right now. The top two, there's 3 teams right now, 2 are in the West. The Kings are 3rd in the NBA right now, their strength of schedule. Only beneath Memphis for the hardest remaining schedule in the Western Conference. The other team is Indiana. The Kings play them on Sunday. But the schedule's not going to do you any favors. So you're going to have to earn it. You're going to have to, how many games have they won? 13. So almost a quarter of their wins are still against the Utah Jazz right now. They have to pick it up against the teams that they should beat.
Who's their best win? Is it the Rockets?
Houston or Phoenix?
It's probably one of those two.
Yeah.
I think Houston probably is the better one because of how well they were playing at the time. But, it's not going to do you any favors. So, sure, they almost beat Denver, but almost isn't going to cut it. Like you need to win those games. And
they're not doing it. They're not doing it. We're going to have a conversation about De'Aaron Fox on the other side. More of your calls, your texts, your Sack Chat. Allen Stiles with the Insiders. Brenden, Nunes, Frankie, Cartoscelli, Sactown Sports. One more segment with Brenden, Nunes, Frankie, Cartoscelli, our Sactown Sports Kings Insiders. And guys, earlier in the show, and I've been wanting to get everyone's thoughts. We're going to get Anthony's thoughts and, of course, the caller's thoughts later in the show about De'Aaron Fox, because I kind of see and hear 2 different things. I hear the story of De'Aaron Fox, and the story goes like this. De'Aaron Fox hasn't been given enough help during his time in Sacramento, and ultimately, if Monty doesn't want to pull the trigger on something, I can't blame De'Aaron Fox for wanting to move forward. The other story I hear is De'Aaron Fox is not SGA. De'Aaron Fox is not Luka. A lot of these guys have been in bad situations, and they've put up video game numbers, and they've been in MVP conversations, and they've taken bad teams, taken the plumbers to the playoffs. Who does he think he is? I don't know if it's that simple, but those are essentially the 2 sides I'm seeing. And I'm curious where both of you fall in the De'Aaron Fox conversation with everything coming out from the Draymond pod. Last night, he has 5 fouls with 6 minutes left in the third. He had 4 turnovers. Malik had 5. He had 4 turnovers. Not a great game for De'Aaron. He didn't end up fouling out, but not a great game for him. Where do you fall on this De'Aaron Fox thing?
I think it goes both ways. And to start with the side on like where De'Aaron needs to be better, the two guys you mentioned, SGA and Luka, like not even just from their play, but the identity of the team mocks the identity of those guys. And to be honest, I think the Kings have so far this year as well with De'Aaron. He's gets off to slow starts. I think that's been the case for a lot of his career. And for the most part, I've been like, yeah, you're getting the rhythm. You're getting other guys involved. Right now, they need him to be better.
Yes. And real quick, just to throw that in, the Mike Brown twice now. Someone needs to look in the Raptors and see somebody in the crowd with a jersey. And then earlier this week, he needs to step up attention to detail. Now continue.
Right. Yeah. And I think that was probably in response to what De'Aaron said on the Draymond pod. And it's just Mike Brown reminding, not that he disagrees, because like we said earlier, I think Mike Brown is practically asking for roster help too, but some of it does fall on De'Aaron. De'Aaron can be better. He turns 27 today. This guy can still get better in his career. I feel like he gets talked about a lot as if like, this is it. Right. I feel like we've seen him get better the last 2-3 years at least, if not predating that. So I think that he can be better. And the leadership thing, I've honestly he's not a rah-rah guy. He's a lead by example guy. You need to find that somewhere else if that's what this team needs. But the roster around him does need to be better. And I very much understand why at this point in his career where he's going on to his 3rd contract, and, you know, I think he's doing a lot of things to be more Mike Conley than John Wall. Now, obviously, John Wall was injury-based there as well. But this is like the peak of his career.
Yeah.
More likely than not. And even if he were to be productive into a 4th contract, this is the time. And your legacy has so much to do with, did you win? And right now the answer is no. And it's partially he could be better, but really I don't think he's been given a fair chance to be in those spots either, because as much as we want to say De'Aaron could be better, like why do we think Orlando or Houston would be so interested? Because I think he could be a number 1 on a team with really good surrounding talent.
Right.
So I personally think it goes both ways.
And I don't know if he'd be a number 1, but
fair enough.
But 1B, whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I personally think it goes both ways, really. But I don't blame De'Aaron for feeling a type of way.
Yeah, and I don't want to, the constant bailout comment of, the depth isn't really there. And like they've made some moves, and they got Malik Monk, his college teammate at Kentucky. They got DeMar DeRozan. They've extended Sabonis. This is the most talent by far he's been surrounded by during his time here. But at the same time, when they're addressing one area, they're kind of taking away from another area. And I just kind of looked through it, and the reason why the Kings have been so successful during this Beam Team Mike Brown era is because they have had depth for some of this period. 2022-23, they were 9th in the NBA in bench points per game. A lot of it's because of Malik Monk. Last year, they were 12th in bench points per game. Moving Malik into that starting lineup has been beneficial for his game and the offense as a whole, I think. I think the offense does work very well, and that's a closing lineup anyway. That's been the closing 5 for the past 2 seasons anyway. But this year, they're 28th in bench points, and they're so thin in that rotation, maybe because of injuries, and Kevin Huerter's missed some time, Trey Lyles has missed time, Malik Monk has missed time. But I think we're at a point now where the roster isn't really rounded out, and it's obviously the topic of conversation for the whole show so far. But De'Aaron's having to do a little bit more, and as he should. He's the best player, and you look at every team in the NBA, every team is going to go as far as their best player. The Celtics and Jason Tatum, Dallas and Luka down the line. De'Aaron is the Sacramento Kings guy. Like he is the player that defenses are going to hone in on late in games, and adding DeRozan has helped at times. Last night, obviously, he did not. It was a bad game for him, but helped in other games. But they need to obviously have more from him early in games. I think that's like my one critique is try to find it early in the games, and maybe the depth and having Kevin Huerter and Trey Lyles back will help alleviate some of those bench problems and make it so that the Kings aren't taking a dive when they're having their main guys off the floor. But there is a switch that has to be flipped, and we've talked about a lot how De'Aaron plays so well when he's angry or irritated or after he gets a technical. There's got to be that, like, he can kind of dig deep. And to Brendan's point, De'Aaron is not someone that's super outspoken and like you said, a rah-rah guy or someone that's going to, I'm not going to say he wouldn't lead a locker room because I think that people do look to him as a leader. But I think there is kind of another gear he can get into and kind of grow into in this kind of next chapter of his career, late 20s. as a human being, I think we all kind of mature and kind of grow into a different person in our late 20s as we get towards that big 3-0. Maybe this is a time for him to kind of, take ownership of this team. And especially if he wants to have, the keys to the franchise going forward. And if there is going to be that Supermax extension, if he does want to be, the guy, like you're mentioning, these other teams that maybe could be interested in trading for him, maybe he wouldn't be the 1A. Here, he's always going to be the 1A. I can't see him not being the 1A here.
Well, and I've gone back and forth with that when De'Aaron says what he's been saying. Is he saying, I don't care if you bring in a 1A. I just want the team to be better.
I don't think he cares.
I don't think and I said this as far as the business comparison, individual contributor versus a people manager. I don't know that De'Aaron wants all that. We don't know. We just assume because the best player on the best team is normally that. De'Aaron is saying, make the roster better. He's not saying build it around me. So I don't even know if you want to do a blow up, right? And maybe Sabonis is part of the blow up and you just move into a different version of the team. I don't know that De'Aaron is not necessarily saying I need to be that dude. And I think if he left, I don't think he would be. I don't think he would. If he goes to the Magic, I think Paolo is still that dude, right? But they're better. If he goes to the Heat, assuming they would still have Jimmy, I think De'Aaron would fit into a collection of guys, but it wouldn't be it's always De'Aaron taking over like the Shays and like the Lucas. So I don't think he needs that. I'm looking here, guys, that I was trying to think of when you see Steph Curry on the bench and he's just enjoying it because Brenden, not this season, but Brenden Pajemski just went off randomly.
Oh God.
Somebody just goes off.
You have to bring this.
No, I'm just saying.
Tie those together.
Or like when Jordan Poole was there.
Jordan Poole. And Steph is just not a bead of sweat on his face, and the Warriors are building a lead. When is the last time you've seen De'Aaron on the bench just getting to relax while everybody's balling? I see this Hawks-Kings game where Keon Ellis had 33, but no Sabonis, no Malik, no DeRozan. So essentially, Keon was just giving them what they were missing. There's never been a bench player this season off the top of my head that bailed the Kings out. Not once.
Even looking back, and our friend Drew just posted a funny meme, but the point of the meme is that he's watching the highlights from the 2022-23 season, and they're wearing those gray jerseys. And the thing that reminds me the most is that game against, I think it was Brooklyn, where Terrence Davis had, I think, like 30-something points off the bench.
James Harden's last game?
I think so. I think that was the game that broke the Brooklyn Nets with Kyrie
Harden. Like 2 or 4 points. It was like Davion clamped him up.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
But, just not quite like the Kings didn't go get Terrence Davis back, but they had different guys on the bench that could kind of step up and be that guy.
Just randomly.
And Malik really was that, and he really still maybe is that, and we'll see if he stays in the starting lineup.
But I don't even know if that's Malik, because you started to assume you're baking that into what the Kings do. I'm talking about a guy that can just randomly, what Malik's
like a Corey
you.
Brewer 50.
I'm just saying somebody on the team that you just. Hey, he could go off, right? And Malik, I guess that is Malik, but just a random guy that's going to give you 25. I feel like you already count what Malik is doing, even though he's coming off the bench.
You're saying like how the Kings against opposing teams, it's like, how is this guy doing, X to us tonight?
Yes.
Like last night, it was Gabe Vincent hitting 4
Gabe
threes.
Vincent. Right. Marcus Smart when they played the Grizzlies. Somebody who, hey, we're not counting on it, but we might get something. They have nobody like that on the bench.
To be fair, Trey Lyles at times probably is a guy that other teams look at and say, Trey Lyles gave us 18 or 20 tonight.
I haven't seen that in 2 years.
He was on a pretty good run before he got hurt, just for the record.
Doing all right.
He was on a pretty good run. I think he was averaging like 9 or 10 points per game off the bench.
That's not what I'm talking about.
Okay, you want someone to score 35 points off the bench?
I'm not saying that.
I don't think it's offense, though.
Because Jordan Poole did it 3 years ago.
I'm not talking about Jordan Poole, but he did.
What would Brenden Pajemski look like over here? Jack Harlow, what are we talking about?
I got a 3-team trade.
I bet. Do not pull that out, man.
I'm not going to, but I'll tell you who it's involving.
Oh, God, I do remember this.
Save that for the deadline week when I'm not here.
Okay. Yeah. No. You know what I won't say?
I think it's defense, though. It's not offense. It's you need a guy that, instead of can you give me 25 points, it's can you give me 10 minutes guarding LeBron James?
So Matisse Thybulle.
Probably ideally more size, but that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Dorian Finney-Smith. Cam Johnson. Is Torrey Craig somebody like that? And that's minor, and that's not enough.
Isaiah
Don't
Stewart,
get me wrong. Yeah, random stuff like that.
I know the Pistons are showing promise, but Isaiah Stewart really would be a solid pairing with this team.
Is DeAndre Hunter available? Is Patrick Williams available? I think it's more about, can you give me that sort of run defensively rather than offensively? Call up JTA.
Hey, well,
Where's Mo Harkless at?
He will never get his chain snatched. Okay, that's Oakland's finest. Guys, before we get you out of here, and I know we've been talking about it, so just to confirm, regardless of whether this team, and I don't know when we're going to talk again because of the holidays, and then Frankie, you're going to have baby Frankie. The next time we do have a roundtable, whenever that is in 2025, this roster will be different, right? There's no way.
I'm saying no, probably not.
When do you think we're going to see each other?
Probably around time trades go down, late January into early February.
That's insane.
Deadline's on the 6th. I think that the market is still coming. There's still things that are at play here. And there are teams that aren't sure what side of the fence they're on. Are they going to be selling? Are they going to ride through? Or are they going to try to buy? We don't know who is fully there yet. Like right now, obviously you have the Jazz, the Pelicans, Toronto, Washington, Charlotte. After that, it's very blurry. We don't know what's going to happen. So I think teams are going to be holding on to players and trying to get the most value out of these returns.
I think Cam Johnson's going to price himself out, by the way. I don't think.
I could see. I mean, if OKC wants anybody, by the way, OKC's outbidding anybody. And there's a couple teams that could easily outbid Sacramento. I would bet, and this is more reading the tea leaves rather than reporting anything, that there's an aspect of, well, when we get Trey Lyles back, when Devin Carter comes back, which I don't think is very far for what it's worth. I think we just saw him doing threes.
I don't want to hear this.
I think it is very grown worthy.
I don't want to hear this.
But I could see that being the silver lining, or like, let's just wait and see what we got here first.
No waiting, no seeing.
I agree, but I think deadline is really where I'm like, for sure by the deadline, obviously.
So just get this clear before we go. You would right now would be saying, like, you'd be hitting the button, trade.
Yes.
But if there's no one on the other end that wants to do it, and if they're doing it, they're trying to like swindle the Kings. They're trying to just totally price you out of the ballpark.
The price tags are already dropping on these reports are out, guys. The reports are out.
Because those tell
everybody
to be true.
They have to be true.
The word is out.
I saw it on the internet.
The word is, go get somebody. Go get somebody. All right, Frankie Cartoscelli, Brenden Nunes. I guess we'll see you when we see you.
Well, you're out next Friday, I think. So maybe
we'll have Brenden.
Maybe Thursday.
Is this a package deal? You don't want me at Frank's?
No, I said we'll have Brenden.
Aren't you back next Thursday? Maybe next Thursday we can hop on.
That's the 26th?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I am there.
There's a game that day too. We can
and it'll be a different roster by then. I can guarantee you.
Okay,
that.
well, all right, we'll see you next Thursday.
Brenden Nunes, Frankie Cartoscelli, 3-team trade, all coming up next week. And coming up on the other side, let's hear from the head of the snake. Is he still that? We hear from De'Aaron Fox. Allen Stiles, Sactown Sports.
The only place you'll find De'Aaron Fox is Sactown Sports.